we're out here to do a flight test with the Developer XE. If you watched our most recent video, this Developer XE had suffered a fairly bad crash following our pickup soccer session with Arturo here, who's out here joining us again. We have the base model Developer with us again. That flew just fine. We're going to take the telemetry radio, the MLRS MR900 30 radio that's made by Maytech, swap it over to this Developer XE because we identified that the radio that was installed in this Developer XE was the issue last time. We're still not sure if it was a firmware or some sort of software bug on the radio, like with parameters and configuration, or if it was actually a hardware failure. But we'll do more troubleshooting and diagnostic work to figure that out. But for the time being, we'll go ahead and get this Developer XE set up. These are actually a little bit older props than what the new standard Developer XE comes with. These are 13.5-inch propellers, or actually, sorry, 13-inch propellers, where Developer XE now comes with 15-inch propellers. But again, for the purpose of this flight, these should do just a trick. Some of that plastic was already off, and I was really hoping that both props would be in there, and they are. So same with this one. The top is already open and both props are in there. Probably should have checked that ahead of time, but better late than never, as they say.
Are you going to put them here?
No, we can throw those away. Yeah, thank you. I was just having to ask Arturo if he's ever watched one of, if not probably my favorite movie, The Princess Bride. Unfortunately, woke up to some pretty bad news, or less than ideal news. Rob Reiner had passed away. He was murdered by his son, him and his wife. And then he's also very notorious for a movie called This Is Spinal Tap, or Spinal Tap. Have you ever heard of that one, Spinal Tap?
Spinal Tap?
Yeah, it's a movie about like a heavy metal rock band.
Okay.
And I think it was kind of a parody. Yeah, satirical comedy. It's like a cult classic, if you've ever heard of that term. And yeah, the guy that produced that movie and The Princess Bride, which The Princess Bride is probably the most universally loved movie of all time. Like, there's no one that's ever watched it that hasn't not just liked it, but, you know, loved it. It's got romance, action, adventure, comedy.
Princess?
Yeah, Princess Bride, or The Princess Bride. And it's actually an old book, but it was adapted into the movie. And that's one of the, again, few properties where the movie is just as good, if not better, than the book in a lot of people's eyes. So I'm just digging through my backpack here. I need the iFixit screwdriver set that we use. Shout out to iFixit. I guess that would be a sponsor I'd be open to. But in any case, we also have our adapter for the telemetry radio. We need the telemetry radio itself. And if all goes well, we'll also fly this Developer XE briefly using the controller and verify that the throttle is operating correctly. So up is up and down is down, where Gerardo thought when he was flying the Developer that the throttle direction was reversed. So we have our telemetry radio. One other quick aside before we get started. This was the battery that we had flying with the Developer XE last time. There are still a few like scuff marks on the fuselage of the Developer XE after it was repaired and rebuilt yesterday. But otherwise, just swapped out a new landing gear. I did glue the boom arms, which we did state out at the field might have been a problem of the crash, but in hindsight, it really wasn't. And I think we even covered that in the video, but just to reiterate that fact, really the worst damage that we had as part of that crash was this battery. Now, I did clip off parts of this connector. I don't know how well that's coming across on camera, but this is a crucial part of the battery for charging it, to tell each individual cell of the 4 cells to charge to the same level. So I went ahead and started taking out the little crimped connectors in the larger balance connector, but still have some work to do to get this battery back up and operational. Technically speaking, it's operational, just can't be properly recharged in its current state. So I guess we'll have another update whether or not this battery is salvageable or if we did lose out on the battery during the crash. So without further ado, let me go ahead and get this Developer XE connected to QGroundControl. We'll attempt the flight via the iVue RoboControl app. If we run into any issues, we'll switch back over to QGroundControl. But otherwise, I'm just going to get all these props ready to install. Before I install them, I'll do another quick motor test just to make sure there's no problems with all the motors. Before I came out here, I did make sure all the motors are spinning in the right direction, but sometimes a motor will stutter if there's a lot of wiring inside, and you kind of crimp the wiring, kind of like if you're familiar with like garden hoses or really any sort of water hoses. If you crimp them, water won't come out. Same thing to a similar degree is the case for electrical wires. So sometimes the motors won't spin properly if the wires are kind of kinked. Thank you. I dropped my screw bag. Better drop my screw bag than my nut sack. Despite it being below freezing out here, it actually doesn't feel too bad with no wind. So knock on wood. All right, let's see. Cool, 4 screw bags, 4 screws. And again, we're going to do the motor test before we put on the props, just because if you do the motor test with the props on, you either need some way to securely hold down Developer, or you need to just be okay with Developer going to tip over if you only have one or a couple of the props on. Or of course, if you have all the props on, you test all the motors, get ready for it to take off. So again, we're just going to connect here via USB really quick. And we should see the connection established here in QGroundControl, as we do see now. Plugging in the battery. This could have been done at the same time or even ahead of plugging in USB. No GPS lock for vehicle just yet. Get a good look at my parents' house, hypothetically speaking. Not that it's, totally public domain or anything, but we should get the GPS update here in just a moment. But let's go ahead, go over to motors. And so for the discrete ESCs that we use, the motors will not spin up to about 17%. If you're using the 4-in-1 ESC for your Developer build, then the motors will start spinning up as low as like 3 or 4%. So I adjusted the slider to 20%. I'm going to hit motor A. And so this was the motor I was the most worried about. A couple times during the rebuild process, I noticed that the motor would like stutter and not freely spin. And that's just because of how the wires were packaged up in the fuselage. They were kind of kinked and like the curve of the wire was too tight. So let's just go ahead and be certain all the other motors are freely spinning. I'm not even double checking that the motors are spinning the correct direction, as I did that before coming out to the field. But let's go ahead, unplug Developer. We're gonna lose connection in QGroundControl. It crashed as it typically does, at least in this most recent iteration. But now we'll go ahead and put on the props. And so with these propellers, they're clearly labeled 13 by 5, so 13 inches long, tip to tip, and then a 5-inch pitch. That's how curved the propellers are, and basically affects the amount of lift the propeller generates. And then they'll either say CCW in this case, or the other ones, let's see if I got lucky, I did, 50-50 chance, right? Or I guess 2/3 with the other 3 props there. This one says CW. So if you don't remember which ones spin clockwise and which ones spin counterclockwise, you can see like the kind of flat tip, if you will, or the the way that the blades spin, you should always see like this edge turn inward. So if you were to put this propeller on here, you should see that develop air is actually going to spin in the wrong direction, or these props are going to spin in the wrong direction, and you would have develop air like tip over on takeoff. So counterclockwise for the front right and rear left, and then clockwise for the front left and rear right. Didn't do the best job explaining it, but I think visually with my explanation it should also make sense. And if not, leave a comment down below and I can maybe create a better visual to show in another video.
Should I help you with this? You're okay?
Yeah, I'm not as helpless as I look. Most of the time, sometimes. And let's see, did I grab the right bit on the first try? I think I might have grabbed one too large. Nope. So we use a 2.5 millimeter metric hex head for installing these props. And it's just 2 of these screws per motor. And I guess the better way to explain what I was trying to explain earlier, basically the edge that has the writing on it that says CW or CCW and the length and the pitch of the prop, that should be the side of the prop that spins inwards. And when I say inwards, look at the top of develop air, look at the bottom of develop air, and that's the way the prop should be spinning. So if they were to spin outwards and not inwards, that means they would spin, you know, towards the side of develop air, and that is not what you want. Uh-oh, they're onto us. You hear those sirens? We gotta go, quick.
Run!
I don't know if there's gonna be any running after Saturday. More like hobbling and quick, hobble to the getaway car. Yeah, if you haven't watched the most recent test flight video with this Developer XE, we did the test flight out at a local middle school's practice field. We had a nice soccer session, and then afterwards, again, we did these flight tests, but Arturo, my dad, and I are for sure all paying the price. I don't know about all the others there, but a few old men that haven't played soccer in years, practically. I don't know if it's fair that I lump myself in the old men category, but you know, certainly feel like it today. Not really. Yeah, that day was almost, I think 70 degrees. It might have gone up to 70 degrees just a couple of days ago, and now we'll be lucky to get much above 40 degrees, which I don't know how that converts from freedom units over to Celsius, but
Here we go.
And I guess lastly, what we need to do, and ideally I should have swapped the radio ahead of time, because I'm going to be taking up off the top cover, and that means I'm going to have to like kind of sandwich all the components and wires back in. So hopefully motor A or any of the motors don't get messed up when I'm putting back on the top cover, but we will ultimately see when we go to fly. So before we do so, I just need to swap this radio. I just unplugged it from the telemetry 1 port inside this develop air, unscrewing the antenna, and then there's the hex nut, and then there's the split nut, and then the washer that all need to be removed in that order. And then going back onto the other top cover, the washer, then the split nut, then the hex nut goes on. So pop open the top cover. We're going to see the rat's nest of wires. Actually, not going to, thankfully. It's honestly not too bad with all the components in there, but it's definitely relatively tight fit. Smooth. All right. And just as we unplugged it from the other developer, just plugging that radio back into telemetry port 1. Need to find a nice little spot that we could tuck this telemetry radio, which I think is going to be easier said than done in this build, but I think we'll be able to just barely make it happen somewhat easily, somewhat comfortably. All right, so I got the top cover snapped back on. Let's do a quick fit check. Move my fingers from the top cover, slam it up and down a little bit, or shake it up and down. Or Taylor Swift, shake it off, shake it off.
Shake it off.
Shake it off, shake it off. Whoa. Cut that. No, I'm kidding. All right, so the moment of truth, ladies and gentlemen, or gentlemen, and maybe lady, or trannies. We're in 2025, we'll let the trannies watch our videos. I don't even remember if I have the telemetry radio, the transmitter, the TX plugged into my computer. You should always have the radio plugged into your computer or the controller turned on before booting up your developer or really any drone aircraft you're about to operate. However, you know, when do we follow rules around here? This is definitely not a place with restricted drone flight. All right, we have a connection. We're going to allow this time, and this is a fancy dancy new update that we just got from Mohit, our lead developer of World's iVue and the iVue RC app. We are using version 1.5.1 released yesterday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, I would assume, since at least most of our team is on Eastern time. So back to the app, open up iVue RoboControl, hit connect. Let's see, we're getting 10 satellites, we're getting battery information, voltage. Let's see if we can get 11, 12, 13 satellites before we attempt to take off. We are in loiter mode. Theoretically, I think we should be ready to fly, but again, let's just give it a couple more moments to lock onto a better satellite connection. All right, we're at 11 satellites. Let's see if we hold that for just another minute or so. If it at least doesn't go down, hopefully it goes up another satellite or two. I typically like to have a dozen satellites with these base GPS units. With these RTK GPS units, you typically get 20 satellites or more fairly quickly. And even the GPS unit that we use in the Developer Mini, that's actually a slightly upgraded version of the standard base model Developer GPS. And here we are, 12, 13 satellites. I think we should be good to go. We're going to just attempt fly drone, arm and fly. It should just take off to 10 feet. Let's go ahead and try that out. So drone successfully set to guided mode, but failed to arm. I'm going to set back to loiter mode. I'm going to arm drone here, error while sending command. So we are having a problem in the development version of the iVue RoboControl app. Let me just, for kind of shits and giggles, try again. Arm and fly. All right, so I'm going to disconnect here. I'm going to try using the production version of the iVue RoboControl app. Unfortunately, I can't check the version of this one just yet. That update has not yet been pushed. We're not getting any of the information populating here. We're going to try reconnecting. Here we are. We're not getting the satellite information though. Let me try hitting connect again. I'm going to reset permissions for the web browser, reload, try connecting again. All right. I am, again, not getting satellite information. I'm getting battery information, and we definitely have a bug in the production version of the iVue RC app, not all of the information displaying properly, and it's not even showing that we're connected, even though we are. Let me try going back over to the dev version. Select add a drone, connect, and here we are. We're getting all the correct information. So yeah, Mohit, I guess we do have some issues to address on the software side. And yep, so it does not look like we're going to fly in the iVue RC app. I'm closing out, or at least disconnecting for the time being, going to open up QGroundControl, and we'll give it a shot there. Okay, so we do have compasses inconsistent, so that could have been an issue for why we're not able to take off in the iVue RC app. So let's see if we do a compass calibration, if we can bypass this issue. So going to set to loiter mode, failed a pre-arm check. So yeah, compass is inconsistent. Vehicle configuration, sensors, and compass. So Arturo, I don't know if you will be able to see the screen. If you like, when I get over there,
yeah.
I will say hit OK, and if you can just hit the OK button for me.
Perfect.
When I say so, I'd very much appreciate it. All right, so I'm going to fold in all these propellers, hopefully to make it a little bit easier to do the compass calibration. Go ahead and hit OK. And then we just heard Developer XE make a audible noise saying it was ready for the compass calibration. And let's see if we can get this good on the first try. Wouldn't that be nice?
George, you're scared. You are.
We gotta do a little movement with the compass calibration. We gotta make Developer XE feel like it's not dancing on its own, dancing by itself. What does it say?
Complete.
Complete, and then there's a couple of sliders that will show red, green, and yellow. All right.
And actually it happens.
So there was a GPS glitch or compass error. One's in the yellow, and then very close to the green. One's on borderline yellow and red. We're going to select reboot vehicle. Developer XE is now rebooting. Let's see if we're going to get a ready to fly. We are like right on the cusp of where I would not typically fly, but the priority 1 compass was a better calibration. So if QGroundControl says we're ready to fly in loiter flight mode, we're going to believe it. Now, once Developer XE takes off, it should not continuously rotate like was caused by the radio issue, but you might see it like twitch or whatever a little bit, just with a less than ideal compass calibration. So we are ready to fly in stabilized flight mode, not quite ready in loiter flight mode. We're waiting for a position estimate. Now we're ready to fly. So now we should actually be ready to fly in the iVue RC app as well. So let's go ahead and close out a QGroundControl. Let's reconnect. Now we do have the satellite connection. Again, this is the development or a preview version of the iVue RoboControl app. So you can technically use this just at your own risk, so to speak. All right, and let's go to fly drone. We'll open up the terminal window. I just closed it. Arm and fly, and
here we go.
And with our own software, ladies and gentlemen. So I did tell, once we rebuilt Developer XE, it just needed to be calibrated as if it were built from the ground up as a new build. Now let's see what happens when we go ahead and put Developer XE into loiter flight mode with a controller. So before we put it into loiter flight mode, I am going to press X to activate the gamepad controller. The gamepad controller is activated, as you should be able to see on the screen. And now if I put it into loiter flight mode, it's still just hovering there. If I go up, up is indeed up, so Gerardo was mistaken, rightfully so, just from the fact that Developer went into smart RTL mode because it had a low battery failsafe. So it's a little bit twitchy, so it's not like the most responsive. I mean, it's doing everything I'm asking it to do, just a little. Actually, the latency is really not all that bad. So Arturo, you want to give it a shot? So the same sort of controls that you had with the Developer Mini, it's just going to be, you know, more responsive. So if you want to, yeah. A first-time flyer with a large Developer XE, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, the top cover's off. Yeah, let's go ahead and bring that down. I'm actually...
Shit.
That's fine. I just put it in land flight mode, so it'll land itself.
Oh.
So we got pretty lucky here, ladies and gentlemen. The top cover actually came off, and so we've actually had it before with the Developer Mini, where we had an old top cover design that only had one latch. It popped off, the propellers caught the top cover, and of course caused a mid-air crash. So as you can see, this is a pretty tight build. Now, this is not how a developer would go to a customer, given we probably shouldn't do our demoing or testing in a way that's not representative of the customer. But again, we come out and do testing like this to see where issues are likely to arise. But we ended up being lucky. We got the test flight that we wanted in, verifying that this Developer XE is flight ready other than the radio issue we've been having with it. The iVue RoboControl app does work, at least in the preview version. That needs to be pushed for production for public use. The controller is working properly, so that's really nice to see. We have some cool updates coming there with button mapping, so you can actually configure what button you want to do what for as far as controlling Developer or a payload that you attach to it. Otherwise, I just need to get back up to the workshop, do a little bit of wire management with this Developer XE, and then we'll be out, if not here, one of the other parts we do some testing at in the next couple days, and you'll catch us in that next video. So thanks for watching. Peace.